Like this story? Subscribe, like, and drop a comment to help us hit 1,000 subs and 4,000 hours. More redemption stories are on the way. Every view keeps us going. Johnny Grimm, the boy they call the killer. Part 1. The Butcher's Boy. They say the devil lives in the details. But I found him in blood, on the floor, in my own home. My name's Johnny Grimm. I was 16, turning 17 that summer. Just a kid, but not really. Because when your old man's a drunk and your mom works 2 jobs, you grow up fast, especially when you've got a little sister counting on you. Becky, 10 years old, smart as hell, always asking questions, always waiting by the window when I got off work just to tell me what she learned that day. I didn't have much, but I had her. And I had mom. And I was trying to help, trying to carry more than a 16-year-old should. I worked after school, weekends, anywhere that paid cash. One of my bosses, Joe Milano, he ran the butcher shop 2 blocks down. He asked if I wanted to earn some extra money on a Saturday. Said he needed someone to clean out the grinders, hoses, all that nasty stuff nobody wanted to touch. $250 under the table? Hell yes, I said. I showed up before dawn, had the shop spotless by 1 in the afternoon. Smelled like bleach, blood, and sweat. But I earned that money. On the walk home, I thought about grabbing a soda for Becky, or giving mom the whole envelope, telling her it was for rent or groceries. We'd figure it out together. We always did. But the moment I turned the corner onto our block, something felt off. Mrs. Nelson, our neighbor from 2B, flagged me down. Her face was pale, her voice shaky. Johnny, I heard yelling, screaming, from your place. Your mom, your sister. I was about to call someone. My stomach dropped. I ran, took the stairs 2 at a time, fumbled with my keys, kicked the door when it wouldn't open right. And then, silence. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel. I took 1 step inside, and I saw her. Becky, lying by her bedroom door. Still. Her hair was matted in blood, her eyes wide open but empty. I dropped the envelope. I fell to my knees, crawled to her, my hands trembling. Then I saw mom, half in the kitchen, half out. Her body looked twisted like she'd been thrown. Her head, I can't even describe it. Both of them gone. Something broke inside me. That's when I heard it. A grunt, a wheeze, movement, from a hallway. I turned, and there he was, my father, wobbling, bleeding from the forehead, holding a bottle like it was a trophy. Smiling. That smile. That smug, crooked grin. Like he was proud of what he did. I don't remember making the decision. My body just moved. I grabbed him by the throat, slammed him against the wall. My fists, left, right, left again. I could hear bones cracking. I threw him down, then picked him back up and slammed him harder. I yelled, "What did you do?" He didn't answer. So I kept hitting. 2 police officers pulled me off him. I broke free. Went after him again. I didn't care what happened to me. One of them tossed me. I didn't stop. Another hit me with a baton. Still didn't stop. It took 4 cops to finally get me down. And even then, they had to call on more backup. By the time they knocked me out, half the apartment was red. I woke up in a hospital bed, handcuffed. My face was swollen, my knuckles bleeding. And the only thing I thought when I opened my eyes, did I send that bastard to hell? Part 2. The things I saw. There's something they don't tell you about trauma. It doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in second by second, while the world around you keeps moving like nothing happened. I was strapped to that hospital bed, wrists handcuffed to the rails, and the fluorescent lights above me hummed like it was just another Tuesday. Like my entire world wasn't lying cold on a slab across town. My face felt like I'd gone 5 rounds of the truck. But I didn't care about the pain. I only cared about one thing. Was he dead? That's when Father Duncan walked in. He stood in the doorway for a minute. Didn't say anything. Just stared at me. Then, quietly, "Hello, Johnny. How are you feeling?" I looked up, tried to smile, but I couldn't hide it. "To be honest, Father, I'm pissed off." He gave a nervous chuckle, then walked over to the side of the bed. "Do you know what your actions have caused?" I stared at him, dead in the eyes. "Did I send that bastard to hell?" He looked stunned. "No, Johnny, he's still alive." That hit me harder than the baton did. I turned my head, stared at the ceiling. Then I said, "The only person I harmed was the man who murdered my mom and my baby sister." "What are you talking about?" He asked. "Johnny, they're saying you harmed your family." I snapped my eyes back to him. "What? No, it was him. My dad. I would never hurt them." I told him everything again. I had just gotten off work. Mrs. Nelson stopped me. Said she heard screams. When I opened the door, I saw them lying there, lifeless. And that's when I saw him, still standing, still breathing, still smirking. I lost it. I won't deny that. But they're trying to twist it, make it look like I lost control before I saw the bodies. Like I attacked all of them in some sort of rage. Then came a knock. The door creaked open. Detective Bill Hodges. Drunk-ass Hodges. My dad's old drinking buddy. He walked in like he owned the place. Notebook in hand. No sympathy in his eyes. Ready to confess? He said, like it was some kind of joke. I didn't answer. He pulled up a chair, leaned forward. Come on, kid. Let's not waste time. We've got 2 bodies, a bloodbath, and you standing in the middle of it all. I glanced at Father Duncan. His lips were tight. Concerned. I looked back at Hodges. Lawyer. What was that? I said, lawyer. And I'll keep saying it. Lawyer, 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 lawyer. He frowned, slammed the notebook shut, stood up, and stormed out without another word. Father Duncan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. That was smart, he said. But I wasn't thinking smart. I was thinking survival. I knew if I talked to Hodges alone, they'd twist it. They'd pin it on me, clean and easy. And that's when I realized the truth doesn't always matter. Not when it's just your word against theirs. Not when the system already made up its mind. After a day or two, the doctors cleared me for release. But not the kind of release you hope for. I was being processed for jail. No trial yet. No hearing. Just the system moving fast. Because beating your own father into a coma makes for easy headlines. They brought me clothes to change into what I was wearing that day. As I pulled off the hospital gown, Father Duncan turned his back. But then he saw something he wasn't expecting. My back. Scarred. Burned. Layered in old bruises. He froze. Johnny, what happened to you? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, let's just say the bastard loved his drink, Padre. For a long time, he said nothing. Just stared at the truth written across my skin. In that moment, he understood. I wasn't a killer. I was a survivor. Part 3. Shackled and sedated. They moved me from the hospital to county lockup just after sunrise. 2 deputies. Shackles on my ankles. Handcuffs locked to a belt around my waist like I was some kind of monster. The hallway smelled like bleach and stale sweat. People stared. Nurses whispered. No one asked what really happened. They already had their headline. Teenage boy butchers family in apartment bloodbath. Doesn't matter if it's true. Just matters if it sells. The ride to the jail was quiet. I kept my eyes on the window, what little I could see through the wire mesh. The sky was overcast. The world still looked normal. But I wasn't. Something inside me had snapped. And I didn't know if it would ever come back. They booked me like any other inmate. Mugshots. Fingerprints. Property inventory. They even bagged the bloody envelope I had in my pocket. The $250 I earned scrubbing meat grinders for Joe Milano. That money was supposed to help pay the rent. Now it was Exhibit B. They gave me a cell. Cold steel bunk. Thin mattress. Toilet with no seat. I sat there, staring at the wall. Replay after replay of Becky's face. Mom's body. The look on my dad's face before I broke it. I wasn't sorry for what I did. I'd do it again. But I was afraid. Not of prison. Not even of dying. I was afraid I'd never get to clear their names. That the world would believe I killed the only people I ever loved. It was that night when Father Duncan returned. He waited at the glass. I picked up the phone on my end. My hands were still trembling. Johnny, he said. I reached out to someone. Who? I asked, barely above a whisper. A man named Raymond Gallo. Criminal defense attorney. He's agreed to represent you. I didn't know the name. Didn't know if it mattered. Why? I asked. Why help me? He leaned closer to glass. Because I saw your back. Because I know you. And because I believe in justice, not headlines. For the first time since that day, I felt something like hope. Not much, but enough to keep breathing. The next day, Gallo showed up. Pinstripe suit, clean shave, calm eyes. The kind of guy who looked like he belonged in a courtroom, not a church pew. He pulled out a folder and opened it without a word. Inside were crime scene photos, witness statements, and me. Covered in blood, cuffed, eyes red and wild. He finally spoke. They're going to try to paint you as a psychopath, Johnny. Someone who snapped and killed his whole family. We both know that's not the truth. But truth doesn't matter without evidence. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Here's what we're going to do, he continued. We're bringing in our own forensic pathologist. His name's Dr. Malcolm Renner. Best in the business. And what if they don't care? I asked. What if they just want someone to blame? He looked at me hard. Then we give them no choice but to face the facts. Because if they want to bury you, Johnny, they're going to have to crawl through a mountain of truth first. I didn't trust easily, but something about him made me believe. Maybe it was the fact he didn't flinch when he saw the photos, or the way he called me kid without sounding like a cop. Either way, I wasn't alone anymore. Later that week, a woman named Maria Torres came to visit. She was a caseworker, child services. Brown folder in hand, no expression on her face. She didn't ask if I was guilty. She asked how long it had been happening. The bruises, the burns, the broken ribs. How long? I hesitated. Then I told her. Since I was 8. She scribbled something down. Your school counselor suspected something. Filed a report years ago. But no follow-up. Of course not. Nobody ever looked twice at the Grimms. We were just another poor family with a drinking problem. Except we weren't. We were three people trying to survive one man's warpath. Now two of us were gone, and I was the one in chains. Part 4. The Drinking Buddy Detective. If there's one thing I learned in county lockup, it's that silence has a weight. It presses on your shoulders. It fills your lungs. It makes every second feel like a punishment. But silence was all I had, because everything I said could and would be twisted. And I knew exactly who'd be the one doing the twisting. Detective Bill Hodges, my old man's drinking buddy. He'd been a beat cop back when I was a kid. Used to sit at our kitchen table with my father, swapping stories over cheap whiskey. I remember one time, he laughed while my dad bragged about hitting me with a belt buckle. I was 8. Hodges didn't stop him. He didn't report it. He poured another drink. So when he showed up at the jail that afternoon, I wasn't surprised. Just angry. He stepped into the interview room like he owned it. Loose tie, coffee stain on his collar, smirk on his face. "Afternoon, Johnny. Feeling better?" I didn't answer. He pulled out a chair, flipped open a folder, and clicked his pen like it was a threat. "Look, kid, let's cut the crap. Your prints are all over the place. Your mom and sister are dead. Your dad's in a coma. You really want to make this hard?" Still, I said nothing. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Just tell me what happened. Tell me you snapped. Say the words and maybe we get you a deal." I looked him straight in the eye and calmly said, "Lawyer." His smile twitched. He chuckled. "You know, I always told your old man, that kid of yours, he's going to be a problem someday." "Lawyer," I repeated. "And until he walks through that door, I'm not saying another word." He slammed the folder shut. "You think this Raymond Gallo guy is going to save you? You're a kid from a busted family. You've got nothing." "Wrong," I said. "I've got the truth." He stood up. "We'll see how far that gets you." And just like that, he was gone. Later that night, I sat in my cell, staring at the concrete wall. The words echoed in my head. "You've got nothing." Maybe he was right. The system didn't care about kids like me. But I wasn't going down without a fight. Not when the man who did this was the one they were calling the victim. A few days passed before Gallo came back. He laid out the situation clean. "Hodges is pushing for a full indictment. First-degree murder. 2 counts. 1 attempted." "What about the autopsies?" I asked. "What about the forensic stuff?" "Still in review, but we're working on it. I got Dr. Malcolm Renner combing through the initial coroner's report." He leaned in. "The good news? Your time of death alibi might hold. Joe Milano confirmed you were at the butcher shop until afternoon. And the bad news? There's no video, no surveillance, just his word. And the neighbor, Mrs. Nelson, we're working on that too. But it's going to come down to one thing." He tapped the folder. "Who the jury believes. Truth doesn't win in court. Belief does. And right now, all the evidence said I had motive, opportunity, and blood on my hands. The part where I came home after the fact, that didn't show up on a body cam. That didn't get written into the police report. That only lived in my word, and maybe the eyes of one old neighbor who cared enough to say something." Maria Torres came back that same afternoon. This time, she brought paperwork. Old school records, counselor notes, emergency room visits from years ago. Broken wrist, 2013. Concussion, 2015. Burn on left forearm, reported as accident with stove. All of them signed off by county doctors. All of them explained away by my father. She shook her head, quietly furious. "This never should have happened," she said. "But it did," I replied. "And now they want to bury me for surviving it." That night, I stared up at the ceiling and whispered a name. "Becky." And for a moment, I swore I heard her voice. Not from the cell, but from the place where memories don't fade, just haunt. "It's not your fault, Johnny. You tried." I rolled onto my side, curled into myself, and let the silence do its work. Because there's one thing about silence they don't tell you. If you sit in it long enough, you start to hear the truth. Part 5. The scars they didn't see. There are 2 kinds of scars in this world. The ones people see and the ones they never bother looking for. Mine? They were the second kind. Until that day, I was being transported to a pretrial hearing. Standard procedure. Shackles on my ankles. Cuffed at the waist. 2 deputies to make sure I didn't snap again. They treated me like a time bomb. Like the headlines had already decided my fate. But all I could think about was Becky. How I was going to prove to a room full of strangers that I didn't kill her. When we got to the courthouse, they led me through a side entrance. No media, no crowd, just bare walls and cold floors. Waiting for me at the holding area was Father Duncan, and someone I hadn't met yet. A woman in her late 50s, silver cross around her neck, calm eyes. "Johnny, this is Sister Maggie O'Sullivan," Father Duncan said. "She's agreed to speak on your behalf, if necessary." She didn't say much at first, just looked at me like she already knew. They brought me into a small holding room, told me to change into clean clothes for court. Standard jumpsuit, state-issued underwear, plain shirt. A correctional officer stood watch. As I removed the county shirt, I heard a small gasp behind me. Father Duncan had seen my back before, but Sister Maggie hadn't. Her hand covered her mouth. She whispered something I didn't catch. Duncan stepped forward and quietly asked the officer for a moment. Please, just 5 minutes. Supervised. Surprisingly, the officer agreed. Maybe he saw it too, the truth carved into my skin. Sister Maggie spoke first. Those scars, they didn't come from that one night, did they? I shook my head. No, ma'am. That was years. Belts, bottles, fists, whatever he could grab. And no one ever stopped him? I laughed bitterly. They just told me to stay out of his way. That it was a man's house, and boys should toughen up. She walked around to face me. Her eyes were moist, but steady. You were just a child, Johnny. So was Becky. Silence fell again. I'm going to make sure they see what I saw today, she said. Good luck, I muttered. They only see what they want to see. She touched my arm gently. Then we'll make them want to see it. Later that day, I stood before Judge Robert Mason for the first time. Courtroom was half full. A few reporters. Some random people just there to watch justice like it was entertainment. The DA, Diane Carver, was already swinging. Your Honor, this is a clear-cut case of unprovoked family homicide. The defendant brutally beat his father, and his prints are on both murder victims, his mother and 10-year-old sister. She gestured to photos laid on the table. My stomach turned, knowing they were using Becky's face like it was part of slideshow. My attorney, Gallo, stood with calm precision. Your Honor, we intend to present evidence that will raise serious doubt about the prosecution's theory, and we ask that the defendant remain in juvenile custody until a full psychological evaluation is completed. The judge didn't say much. Didn't show any emotion either. Just scribbled something down. So ordered, he finally said. Next hearing scheduled in 10 days. After court, they brought me back to the holding room. Sister Maggie was waiting. She handed something to Gallo, a file folder. Inside were notes, reports, photographs. Some of them from when I was just a kid. Where'd you get these? Gallo asked. Diocese records, she said. I used to run the after-school program Johnny attended years ago. We filed an incident report. Never followed up on. I'd forgotten about that. The day I showed up with a bruised eye and said I fell down the stairs. But she hadn't forgotten. She kept it. Back at county, I sat on my bunk and stared at the ceiling again. This time, I didn't feel entirely alone. Pieces were moving. Small pieces, but they mattered. Because maybe, just maybe, someone was finally starting to see the scars I didn't have to explain. Part 6. Gallo's Gamble. Every kid on the block had a fantasy about what they'd be when they grew up. Some wanted to be cops. Some wanted to be astronauts. Me? I just wanted to be free. Free from my old man's fists. Free from a sound of glass breaking at midnight. Free from carrying the weight my mom should never have had to carry alone. But now I was carrying something else, a murder charge. And freedom had never felt farther away. Raymond Gallo wasn't your typical defense attorney. He didn't talk in circles or throw out big words to sound smart. He spoke like someone who knew how fast a good kid could get swallowed up by a bad system. And he didn't flinch when I asked the hard questions. What are my chances? I asked one morning in the visitor's room. Depends, he said, flipping through paperwork. On what? On whether the jury sees you as a survivor or a threat. That shut me up for a second. Because deep down, I wasn't even sure myself. Gallo laid out the plan. Step 1. Bring in DR. Malcolm Renner, an independent forensic pathologist. The county coroner rushed this, Gallo explained. We need an expert who isn't being told how to read the evidence. Step 2. Establish my timeline. Joe Milano's statement said I was at the butcher shop from 6 in the morning until just after 1. Becky and my mom were likely killed around noon. Renner was going to verify that, down to the hour, if possible. I asked Gallo why he even cared. Why take on some broke kid with no family and no name? He looked at me hard, then said, because when I was your age, I had someone believe in me. You remind me of that kid. He didn't need to say anything else. I nodded. Thanks. Don't thank me yet, he replied. We're just getting started. Meanwhile, Maria Torres was digging through child services records like her life depended on it. She found missed reports, teacher concerns, photos that never made it into any police files. It's systemic failure, she told Gallo. The abuse was visible, documented, and ignored. Can we use it in court? He asked. We have to. Then came the call from Dr. Renner. He'd reviewed the initial autopsy reports and the police timeline. There's a gap, he said bluntly. Becky and her mother died hours before Johnny was even home. How sure are you? Gallo asked. Certain, based on lividity patterns and stomach content analysis. Time of death was between 10:30 and 11:15 a.m. And Johnny has an alibi through 1 p.m. It was our first real break. But it wasn't a win yet. because proving I didn't kill them didn't automatically prove I was innocent. Not in the eyes of the law, and definitely not in the eyes of the people who already decided I was guilty. That week, Gallo filed a motion for a pre-trial evidentiary hearing. He wanted the judge to hear Dr. Renner's findings before we even got to trial. The DA fought it hard, said it was premature, said it was media theater. But Judge Mason approved it anyway. He wanted to see the evidence. For the first time, someone did. The hearing was short. Dr. Renner took the stand and calmly explained every point, from blood pooling to body temperature to tissue decomposition. It was clinical, cold, but powerful. DA Carver tried to discredit him. "Doctor, are you aware this defendant brutally assaulted his father?" "I'm here to talk about 2 deaths," Renner replied. "Not 1 beating." Even the judge raised an eyebrow at that response. Afterward, Gallo sat beside me in the holding room. "It's a start," he said. "A good one, but they're still pushing for trial." "Why?" I asked. "If they know I didn't kill them, why keep going?" "Because backing down makes them look wrong, and prosecutors hate looking wrong." I looked at the floor. "So what now?" He smiled. "Now, we dig in." And that's what we did. Every file, every record, every little inconsistency in the case. We combed through it all, because the truth was there, buried in the noise. And Raymond Gallo was going to pull it out, one shred at a time. They called it a gamble, taking a high-profile case with no money, no media support, and no public sympathy. But Gallo didn't care about odds. He cared about facts. And as far as he was concerned, the only thing I was guilty of was surviving long enough to tell the story. Part 7. Their blood, my hands. County lockup has a way of turning days into fog. No clocks, no fresh air, just a concrete box and your thoughts. And I had plenty of those. I'd lie on the bunk, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Some nights I'd count the cracks. Other nights, I just listened to the silence. But no matter what I did, I couldn't stop seeing it. The blood. On the floor. On my clothes. On my hands. Even after the officers dragged me off him. Even after the tasers, the baton. It was still there. Soaked into my skin. Into my memory. I could still hear my own voice screaming like an animal. "You killed them. You killed them, you bastard." They said the scene looked like a war zone. Furniture flipped. Glass shattered. Red on the walls like paint. But I didn't remember any of that. All I remembered was Becky, lying on her side, still clutching her favorite doll, her eyes wide, but already gone. And my mom, halfway through the doorway, like she'd tried to shield her. The rage that followed wasn't calculated. It wasn't conscious. It was survival. It was grief. It was everything I'd held in for years bursting out all at once. My lawyer, Gallo, told me not to talk about that part during trial prep. We let the experts speak. We let the evidence talk. But I couldn't shut off. It kept replaying in my head over and over. And every time, it ended the same. Me on top of my father, his blood mixing with theirs. Maria Torres came to see me again. She'd been working nonstop, digging through school records, old hospital visits, CPS reports that went ignored. She looked tired but determined. "Johnny," she said, "I want you to know something." "Okay, I believe you." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't believe her, but because part of me didn't think it mattered. Then she said something that hit harder than I expected. "You didn't fail them." I looked up. "I tried to protect them. And you did. You were a child in a battlefield. You survived. That matters." I didn't cry. Not then. But when she left, I sat down on the bunk and let it come. Quiet. Private. Just me, the cell walls, and the memory of the 2 people I loved most. The next day, I asked the guard for a pencil and paper. He gave me a stub of a golf pencil and a sheet of blank forms. And I started writing. Not a statement. Not a confession. Just thoughts. Letters I'd never send. Pages I'd never show. "Dear Becky, I'm sorry I wasn't there sooner. Dear Mom, I hope you know how hard I tried." I wrote every day. Sometimes full pages. Sometimes just one sentence, over and over. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Gallo stopped by again the following week. "The DA's office is doubling down," he said. "They're pushing for adult trial status." "So I go from county to prison," I muttered. "We're fighting it, but they're painting you as a violent offender. You beat your father into a coma. They're using that as their anchor. And the part where he killed my family? They're trying to say it was all one rage-fueled act, that you killed everyone in a blackout." I laughed once. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly them. They couldn't see the difference between vengeance and murder. Couldn't understand what it's like to walk into your home and find the only good things in your life broken beyond saving. I didn't want revenge. I wanted undone. But time doesn't work like that. And neither does grief. That night, I folded the letters I wrote and hid them under my mattress. Not because I was ashamed, but because those pages were all I had left. My truth. My rage. My broken pieces, all wrapped in the blood I couldn't wash off. They said I was dangerous, that I was unpredictable. But the truth is, I was just a kid who loved his family and had nothing left to lose. Part 8. The pieces don't fit. Truth is a funny thing. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And if you're too angry, too broken, you might miss it. But not Raymond Gallo. He was listening, and what he started to hear didn't add up. It started with a timeline. According to the county's own coroner report, time of death for Becky and my mom was estimated at noon. Problem was, Joe Milano had already sworn under oath that I was still cleaning meat grinders in the back of his butcher shop until just after 1 p.m. Gallo pushed harder. He asked Dr. Malcolm Renner to re-examine the evidence, and Renner didn't hold back. The stomach contents of both victims suggest their last meal occurred around 10:15 a.m. Lividity patterns, combined with core temperature drop, put time of death between 10:30 and 11:15. So they were gone before Johnny even came home? Gallo asked. Yes, Renner replied. And the father? Alive and upright. That single statement shifted everything. Maria Torres added to it. She tracked down Mrs. Nelson, the neighbor who first heard the screaming. I told the police, Mrs. Nelson said. I told them I heard yelling, breaking things. I told them I heard the little girl scream before it all went silent. And did you hear Johnny's voice? Maria asked. No, I didn't hear him come up until later. The door opened, and then I heard him shout. Then everything got loud again. Her testimony had been omitted from the original report. Not relevant, they'd said. But now, it was very relevant. Because the pieces didn't fit. Not the timeline. Not the scene. Not the story they tried to force on me. Detective Hodges, of course, doubled down. He claimed I'd lied to Joe, that I had slipped out of the butcher shop early and committed the murders in a fit of rage. No evidence to support it. Just a theory. Just a cop, defending the only friend he had left from the bottle. Father Duncan showed up at the next prep session. He had something in his hands, a folder from the church archives. I asked Sister Maggie to dig into some of our older records, he said. You may want to see this. Inside were reports from years ago. Photos of me at age 9, attending the after-school program with visible bruises. One teacher had written, Johnny flinches every time an adult raises their voice. Another read. He said his dad burned him with a cigarette. No one followed up. Gallo nodded. We can use this, he said. They'll say it's old, I replied. That it doesn't prove anything. It proves one thing, he said. That what happened to your mom and sister wasn't some one-time explosion. It was years of violence finally reaching the edge. The DA, Diane Carver, tried to suppress the church records. Said they weren't admissible, hearsay, irrelevant. But Judge Mason allowed it for pretrial review. His words? This court will not ignore documented patterns of abuse, regardless of when they occurred. We were getting traction. Not momentum, not yet, but traction. Enough to make people uncomfortable. Enough to make them look again. Meanwhile, Gallo prepped me for what was next. They're going to come after you hard in trial. Paint you as unstable, violent, dangerous. And what do I say? Nothing, he said. You let the evidence speak for you. But I wasn't sure if that would be enough. Because when people see blood on someone's hands, they rarely stop to ask why. They just want someone to blame. That night, I sat in my cell and replayed the case in my head. Like it was a puzzle. The screams, the blood, the timeline, the missing neighbor testimony, the silence in those reports, and the one man who'd been drunk through it all, who couldn't defend himself now, because he was lying in a coma, still breathing, but dead in every way that mattered. I should have hated him, and I did. But more than that, I hated the system that let it go on this long. Because maybe, just maybe, if someone had listened when I was 9, when I showed up with bruises, if someone had cared then, Becky would still be alive. Mom would still be alive, and I wouldn't be sitting in a concrete box, waiting for the world to decide if I deserved to exist. Part 9, the trial. When the trial began, they brought me into the courtroom wearing a suit. Not shackles. Not a jumpsuit. A suit. The idea, Gallo said, was to make me look human, like someone the jury could understand, maybe even sympathize with. But nothing about the courtroom felt human. The air was cold, the walls too clean, and the people, they weren't looking at me like I was a person. They were looking at me like a story. Judge Mason presided. Stoic, professional, hard to read. DA Diane Carver opened with fire. She stood in front of the jury box, no notes, just steel in her eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case of domestic horror. A 17-year-old boy, full of rage, turned his home into a bloodbath. His mother and sister didn't stand a chance. His father? Left in a coma. And now, the defendant wants you to believe he was just defending himself. She let the silence hang. Then she nodded and sat down. That was it. Short, sharp, surgical. Gallo didn't try to match her theatrics. He stepped up slowly, calm. You'll hear from witnesses who knew Johnny as more than just an arrest photo. You'll hear medical evidence, a forensic timeline, a history of abuse no child should ever endure. He looked at me, and you'll hear how all of it was ignored until it was too late. Then he sat down. The first day was all about evidence. Crime scene photos, fingerprints, autopsy reports. They didn't show the jury Becky's face, thank God, but they showed enough. Enough to make people shift in their seats. Enough to make one juror wipe her eye. Carver made sure to highlight every drop of blood I left on my father's body. But not one word about what that man did before I got home. Day 2, she brought in Detective Hodges. He took the stand with confidence, like he was testifying in a bar, not a courtroom. Johnny Grimm was covered in blood when we arrived, he said. He resisted arrest, struck officers, and had to be subdued with force. Gallo stood and approached the witness box. Detective, were you aware of prior reports against Johnny's father? Not directly. Were you, or were you not, his drinking buddy? Objection, Carver snapped. Withdrawn, Gallo said with a smile. He let it hang there, didn't need the jury to hear the answer. They already knew. Then came the turning point. Joe Milano took the stand. Rough hands, blood-stained apron, voice of a man who didn't waste words. Johnny was with me, from before 6 in the morning till about 1 p.m. Never left. I'd stake my business on it. And at any point, did he seem agitated? Violent? No. He was tired. Focused. Said he was bringing the money home to help his mom. Gallo let the jury sit with that for a moment. Next up was Dr. Malcolm Renner. He calmly explained the science. Time of death, lividity, stomach contents. There is no medical possibility the murders occurred while Johnny Grimm was at home. None. Carver tried to twist it. Doctor, is it true you were paid for your testimony? Yes, Renner said. And I'd say the same thing if I wasn't. The facts are what they are. Maria Torres was last. She brought the fire. This wasn't just a one-time incident. Johnny's abuse was documented, just never followed up on. We failed him. The system failed him. And now he's the one on trial. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She didn't need to. I didn't take the stand. It was Gallo's decision. You've already told your truth, he said. Let the rest of them do the talking now. And he was right. I didn't need to explain my rage. The jury had seen the scars. Closing arguments came fast. Carver tried to refocus everything. He still beat a man into a coma. That is not self-defense. That is assault with intent to kill. Gallo countered. What would you have done if you walked in and saw your family lying dead on the floor, and the man who did it standing there, smiling? Silence. You could feel the weight of it. The jury was dismissed. And for the first time in weeks, I sat in my cell without replaying the past. Because now it was out of my hands. I didn't pray for forgiveness. Didn't pray for a miracle. I prayed that Becky and Mom could see me. See that I fought. That I didn't let them turn me into what they wanted me to be. And if they could see that, whatever happened next, I'd be okay. Part 10. The verdict. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. 9 hours of waiting. 9 hours of pacing in my cell. 9 hours of wondering if the truth mattered more than the narrative. They say you can't predict a jury. You can show them blood. You can show them evidence. But you can't make them feel what you felt. You can't make them see what you saw. When the bailiff came for me, I could barely breathe. They walked me into the courtroom like I was walking toward a sentence carved in stone. Gallo stood beside me. He didn't say anything. He just gave me a nod. It was enough. Judge Mason read the room, then turned to the foreperson. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? We have, Your Honor. She held a slip of paper like it weighed 1,000 pounds. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Jennifer Grimm, we find the defendant not guilty. A gasp echoed across the gallery. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Rebecca Grimm, we find the defendant not guilty. My knees almost buckled, but there was still one more. On the charge of attempted murder in the assault of John Grimm Sr., we find the defendant guilty of aggravated assault. I closed my eyes. Not murder. Not attempted murder. Aggravated assault. It wasn't freedom, but it wasn't life in prison either. Judge Mason called for order, then looked right at me. Johnny Grimm, you are hereby convicted of aggravated assault in the first degree. This court recognizes the extensive mitigating circumstances surrounding your case, including prolonged abuse, psychological trauma, and the impact of discovering your family's deaths. He paused, like he wasn't reading from a script anymore. You are a product of violence, but not its creator. This court sentences you to 5 years in state custody, with credit for time served. However, given your age, background, and potential for rehabilitation, You are eligible for transfer into a structured military enlistment program, subject to federal approval. My breath caught. Military? Afterward, in the holding room, Gallo explained. It's a real program. Volunteer-based. Experimental. It's for juveniles who've aged out of the system but show capability, discipline, and no prior violent record until a triggering event. So what? They train me to be a soldier. More like they give you a new identity, a new purpose, a second shot. I looked at him. You believe in second shots? No, he said, adjusting his tie. I believe in survivors who don't give up. I didn't know what to think. My heart was still back in the courtroom, reliving every second of that moment when I heard, not guilty. But as the hours passed, it started to hit me. I was going to live. Maybe not free, maybe not clean, but alive, and with a chance to build something from the wreckage. Father Duncan visited me later that night. He didn't say much, just sat down across from me, Bible in hand, eyes wet but smiling. They saw the truth, Johnny. Maybe, I said, or maybe they just got tired of the lies. He opened his Bible, pulled out a folded piece of paper. Your mom wrote this years ago. She asked me to hold it, in case she never got the chance to give it to you herself. I took the note with shaking hands. It read,
Johnny, no matter what the world tells you, you are not your father. You are better, kinder, stronger. Keep fighting, baby. You were born to.
I didn't cry. Not then. But something in me healed a little in that moment. Something I didn't even know was broken. The next day, I signed the paperwork. Enlistment, conditional transfer, an intake number, a bus ride waiting. My story wasn't over. Not even close. Part 11. Marching toward the fire. They said the military would break me down before it built me up. Good luck with that. I was already broken. But what they didn't expect was that I knew how to put myself back together. Piece by piece. Scar by scar. Because when you survive what I did, getting screamed at by a drill sergeant isn't fear. It's routine. I was shipped to a special intake program at Fort Silver Ridge. Quiet base. Top secret rehab to enlistment structure. They didn't ask about your past. They asked if you could carry weight, follow orders, and endure pain. Check, check, and check. They gave me a bunk in a shared barracks. 5 others in my unit. All of them carrying demons. But none of them spoke much. They called us the ghosts. The ones who came from the system, not suburbia. I didn't talk about what happened. Didn't say a word about Becky. About Mom. About the trial. But one night, during lights out, someone asked what I was in for. I didn't answer. One of the guys, quiet older, muttered, "Doesn't matter. We're all dead men doing push-ups." He wasn't wrong. But me? I wasn't dead. I was waiting. Training hit hard. Physical drills at 4 a.m. Hand to hand. Weapons. Endurance under pressure. But I didn't fold. I thrived. Pain didn't bother me. Discipline didn't scare me. And pushing my body to the edge? That was freedom. The instructors noticed. Especially one, Sergeant First Class Dyer. Steel jaw, dead eyes. Used to run recon units in places we weren't supposed to know about. He pulled me aside after a drill one day. "Grimm," he said, "you're not like the rest of them. Sir, you don't hesitate. You don't question. You execute. That's what you want, isn't it?" "No," he said, "that's what they want. I just follow orders." I didn't ask who they were. I didn't need to. Months passed. Missions got harder. Simulations got darker. Urban combat. Zero visibility ops. Interrogation resistance. I was pulled for a specialized trial program. Single-man op simulation. Everyone else cracked in week 1. I made it to week 5. They started calling me Grimm. No jokes. No mocking. Just respect. And a little fear. Grimm doesn't sleep. Grimm doesn't miss. If Grimm's on the op, don't get in his way. It stuck. They stopped using my first name altogether. And I didn't correct them. Then came the mission. Not a drill. Not training. Real. They called it a field test. An Allied recon unit had gone dark in a border zone. No backup team was available or willing. So they called me. "You don't have to do this," Dyer told me. "You haven't earned your full clearance yet." "What's the objective?" I asked. "Get in. Retrieve intel. If the team's alive, bring them out. If not, don't come back empty." I nodded. That was all I needed. The op was chaos. Smoke. Shells. Rocks that breathed fire and concrete that bled. I moved alone. Silent. Efficient. Found one of the recon soldiers still breathing, pinned under debris. Got him out. Got the intel too. And walked 5 clicks back through enemy perimeter with a broken radio and 2 bullets in my side. I didn't stop once. Back at base, they patched me up and logged the op as a success. But something else happened. An internal memo went around. Operative Grimm, single unit completion ratio, 100%. Psych eval, controlled, stable, unshakable under pressure. That was the day I stopped being Johnny Grimm and became something else, something they only called when everything else had failed. They didn't send me into fire anymore. They sent me through it, and I never looked back, because if I did, I'd have to face what still burned inside me. Part 12. I'll see you in hell. I was mid-deployment in the Horn of Africa when a message came through. Encrypted. Urgent. Not from command, from someone else. Father Duncan. He's dying, the message read. If there's anything left in you, come say goodbye. I didn't need to ask who he was. My father, John Grimm Sr., the man who destroyed everything I loved and made me into something the world had no idea how to handle. I stared at that message for a long time. They always say time heals. But time didn't change what I saw in that apartment. Didn't erase the sound of Becky's last breath. Didn't soften the memory of Mom's blood staining my shoes. He was in a hospital now, hooked up to tubes, clinging to life. And for some reason, the priest thought I needed to see that. I flew back under escort, papers sealed, identity scrubbed. Didn't wear my uniform. Didn't want the name Grimm to follow me into that place. I walked through the hospital quietly. No media. No cameras. Just a silent visit to a past I'd try to bury. Father Duncan met me in the hallway. He looked older. Tired. You didn't have to come, he said. I know. He asked for you. By name. That meant nothing to me. But I nodded anyway. Room 408. He lay there like a corpse that hadn't caught up yet. Eyes sunken. Skin paper thin. Heart monitor beeping slow and steady. He turned his head when I walked in. Didn't say anything right away. Neither did I. I stood at the foot of the bed. Memories hit me in waves. The belt. The screams. Becky hiding behind the couch. All of it flooding back like poison in my lungs. Then he spoke. Johnny. The voice was barely there. I didn't mean to. I didn't move. I was drunk. I didn't know. I walked aside. Looked down at the man who used to terrify me. Now, he looked like nothing. Like the wind could finish what I started. You want forgiveness? I asked. He didn't answer. Just blinked, slow and labored. You killed them. I leaned closer. And I should have killed you. Johnny, please. I leaned in until he could see the eyes of the boy he once beat down. The boy who survived him. You want peace? You want me to say it's okay? I'm not that boy anymore. I took a breath. Steady. Final. I'll see you in hell. Then I turned around and walked out. Father Duncan didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The silence was loud enough. Back on base a week later, I was called in for a special briefing. Not about my visit. Not about my past. A mission. You're the only one we trust with this, Grimm. I nodded. When do I leave? I still keep a photo of Becky tucked into my gear. Not for comfort, for clarity. To remind myself who I am. And who I refuse to become. They call me a shadow. A ghost. A reaper. But I know the truth. I was forged in fire. Tempered by blood. And sharpened by everything the world tried to bury me with. I wasn't supposed to survive. But I did. And now, I go where no one else can. So when the monsters come crawling, they sent for me. The man who looked the devil in the eye. And walked away burning. My name is Johnny Grimm. And I'm not afraid of hell. Because I already lived through it. Like this story? Subscribe, like, and drop a comment to help us hit 1,000 subs and 4,000 hours. More redemption stories are on the way. Every view keeps us going.